I'm now going to set aside this large satchel that I was making because I'm using a different gusset method on that one, and I will be videotaping that separately. For the large, I'm using a gusset that cannot be stretched. So I cut both the gusset exterior and lining on the grain because this is not going to be stretching. So for that, I will use the alternate gusset construction, which has a separate video. For the standard construction, though, you'll take your piece F and it is cut out on the bias, both the exterior and the lining. And whichever method you're doing, you are going to start out by sewing the short ends together. For this version that I'm doing, the light blue is the lining, the dark blue is the exterior. They both have been cut out in the bias, and since I was using a lighter weight fabric, I decided to interface it, but even the interfacing is cut on the bias. So this has just a little bit of stretch, which is all I need. Now I am going to top stitch the ends. And after top stitching the sides, I'm going to baste the long edges. For this, it's the mini size, and so I probably don't have to pin these sides. But for the larger sizes, you probably will want to clip or pin these. But one thing I'm going to actually do, if you just have a straight stitch machine, I would lengthen your stitch so it still is able to stretch. I'm going to baste it with a zigzag. So it can still stretch without any problem. Okay, one thing I'm also going to do, I'm going to take out that handy fray check a little bit and just zoom in a bit. I'm going to put fray check just on this top 1/4 inch or so. I would do that after making sure you've trimmed off any extra threads. Okay, I'm going to let that dry just for a second. One important thing to do now is to mark the center of your gusset on both sides. So I'm going to do that. Okay, and I am going to double check and make sure that I have the centers marked on here. Got it there. And I've got it marked here. Okay, good. So I'm now going to take my gusset and I'm going to match up the right side of the gusset to the right side of the front. And I'm going to clip this. And now I'm going to take the top edge here and I'm going to match it not entirely to the top edge here, but about 1/8 of an inch past it. And there's a reason for that. It's easy when sewing to have it just slip down just a little bit and then your top raw edge is showing, and this just prevents that from happening. So you've got it about 1/8 of an inch past the edge. And then I ease the rest of it into place. And this is why having it on the bias, it makes it much easier because it just eases so nicely into place. I've tried doing it with a vinyl that had just a little bit of horizontal stretch, and it kind of worked, but the bias stretch really is the best. Okay, now I am going to sew this in place. Remember, it's a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Zoom this in a bit. Nope, never mind. Okay, and now I'm going to fold the gusset around like this, around this raw edge, and just push the front piece into place so that this looks like a binding on the front. Try to push out any wrinkles. And now I'm going to use clips to fasten this into place in the front. And the reason why I wanted it to have fray check here is because this top edge, it's going to be covered like that, but if you had any fraying edges over time, they'll work their way out. Now, if you're doing the alternate gusset construction, which we'll have a different video, this part is done with binding separately. The gusset and the binding are not the same piece. So you have that all pinned, and now from the front we're going to sew all the way around. I'm going to just trim some extra threads I see here. Okay. I'm going to edge stitch all this binding all the way around, and I have lengthened my stitch a little bit, It's getting a little thick. Make sure to back stitch. And as I move around, I just push the gusset out of the way, make sure there's no wrinkles in the back on the curves. I'm kind of feeling with my thumb to make sure it's flat. Alright, and I top stitched or back stitched at the top. Alright. So I'm just going to trim these threads. And this is what it should look like here. So there's no raw edge on the inside showing. That's what it looks like. So before I move back to the large purse to show you the other construction method, we've got to attach this to the back. So I'm going to locate my center here, matched up with the center, which you probably can't see, but right here. And this top edge, you can kind of see the thicknesses here. There's the top of the pocket, there's the seam, and then this will go right above that. These thick places, I didn't want any of them to overlap. So it'll be about 3/8 of an inch above this back seam. And all these seams will just interlock. Okay, so that should fit nicely. Now I'm just going to baste that in place. And you might have to fold this away, which is easier, of course, if it's not really thick fabric. But even if it is, it should fold a bit. Sorry if my fingers are blocking this. Okay, so we are almost done. You can even check to see how it's going to look once the final binding is there. And that's all that's left with this version, is to do the final binding.